So thank you everybody for coming. Some of us know each other, some of us don't. I actually met Nina just a couple of days ago. Yes, Josh? I'm going to go around and tap you now. So I met Nina literally a couple of days ago, but when you hear her talking, you'll understand why. She has done so much in her young life and given up so much to help others that her story just resonated so much with a lot of things that I believe in, and so we really wanted to get just a small group of people together to allow her to talk about what she's been doing and give her some support, which I think is what our community is about. So that's it. Without any further ado, I hope she's coming through the curtain. Nina Nung.
Hello, thank you, Chantal. Really, really thank you. We did just meet a couple of days ago from a Facebook expat group, and then she jumped to help me organize this. So thank you very, very much. I am Nina. My name is Nina. I know some of you from the past, and I'm very happy to see a lot of new faces. One of the reasons I wanted to have this event, oh my gosh, and Aurora. That's Aurora, by the way. Hi, Aurora. So I'm originally from the US. I was born and raised in New York. I recently became a nomad. I sold all my stuff, and it just made more sense because I have a lot of time spent in conflict zones, disaster zones, war zones for work. But Phuket has become a bit of a home, even though I call myself a nomad. I try to spend a couple of months here per year. The reason to gather everyone here tonight is to bring light to something that maybe you've read about on the news, seen about, talked to friends about, but don't exactly know what's actually going on or how to get involved. And that is about Palestine, and this is about Gaza. I have had the honor to be inside Gaza the past few months a few times, and it is something different from anything I've seen in my career. I've been in other war zones like Iraq, and I've done work for Ukraine, Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, and I've been to Haiti a bunch of times, but the situation in Gaza is a little bit different. Yeah, it's hard to put it exactly into words, but when I'm there, we're doing medical. So my background's in nursing. I was an ER nurse at first, and I've had a career of 15 years in nursing and hospital administration and humanitarian aid. So what made me want to go to Gaza? It's, like I said, I feel like there's something a little bit different about it in the sense that Palestinians there don't have the chance to leave and become refugees. So when I was in Iraq for the war during Mosul in 2017, the leaflets are dropped. And this is the style these days. I don't know why. But they drop the leaflets, and they'll tell the civilians to get out of this place. We're going to have a raid. We're going to bomb. We're going to do whatever for ISIS, for this, for that. So in other scenarios, like in Ukraine, people could leave. People could leave Ukraine. People could leave Iraq. And Palestine's a little bit different. You can't just walk from one side of the border to the other. And there's a lot of restrictions and reasons for that. So the way I want to format this talk also is I want to gauge what the audience knows. I think some people here may not know a whole lot about what's going into Gaza, so I don't want to just jump right into all of the details. And some of you may have never been exposed to humanitarian aid before. Can I get a show of hands, who has a lot of knowledge about humanitarian aid and humanitarian aid deployments? Not a lot. So that's completely fine. The way these situations work is we collaborate with the United Nations and the World Health Organization to get access into these countries and conflict zones. And that's how I was able to go to Gaza. Once we are inside, we really co-locate with the locals. We work alongside them. A lot of the Palestinian doctors and nurses, they've been working tirelessly since October, most of them without pay. So fast forward to what I'm doing now. I started my own NGO last fall, and thank you, my fan. I started my own NGO last fall, and that has given me some flexibility in what I'm able to do. And what I want to do is challenge the world to think outside of the box. So when we think about humanitarian aid, a lot of the times it's like, okay, you go in, maybe you give out boxes of food, maybe you give medical care in the hospital, and then you leave. And then you rotate another team in. And then like our brains think like this is all we can do. The initiatives that my NGO is starting now, like I said, is thinking outside of the box. Like how can we employ Palestinians and then give them a sense of purpose? So it's not, Palestine wasn't like a third world country. People there are educated. There's a lot of people with PhDs. There are architects, there are accountants, there are doctors. They're currently just in this position where a lot of them are still doing the work but not getting paid. So one of the things that my NGO is doing is we're saying, okay, we're going to build this little clinic and we will hire a Palestinian doctor and a nurse, and we're going to pay you a salary because they haven't gotten salaries in months. To put more perspective into that, the cost of living in Gaza has been, because of the politics and like the way items move in and out, I think one egg was last cited to be $2.50. So that sounds like a lot even for, I'm from the US, that sounds like a lot for an American. It, I think, sounds like a lot for Thailand and like Europe and wherever everyone else is in here is from. So imagine you don't have a salary, an egg costs $1.50. You have family members to feed, you have babies, you have mothers, you have everybody. It's just created a situation where it's demoralizing for our colleagues that we're standing next to, and they have to deal with this day in and day out. I would like to pause, and I want to take a few questions first to see how I can gear this conversation. And also, like a lot of you I've spoken to on Facebook, Messenger, and things like that. Does anyone want to start this? I just want one question, and then I want to go from there. Don't be shy. Ask anything you want. It could be about me, it could be about my career, it can be about Gaza. I also don't want to overwhelm you so much with too much at once.
So, when was the last time you were able to enter Gaza?
Right before the Rafah border closed. I think I left mid-May.
Okay.
No, sorry, mid-April.
And is it possible for you to return?
Right now, it's gotten complicated because we used to cross from Egypt into Gaza, and the process was hard, but with the right authorities, like the UN and the WHO, we're able to get through. Now it's completely closed. No one can go in, no one can come out. So the pathway is through Jordan and then Karim Shalom, which is Israel. My passport has Iraqi stamps, and even before this conflict, Israel had an issue with anyone, even if you're American or whoever, if you have Iraqi stamps, you can't get in. But on top of that, other NGOs have not been able to pass, even though they lined up in Jordan to go through. So right now, the movement in and out has been restricted, and it's caused a lot of trouble. Some people are still stuck inside.
Yeah.
I have a colleague, she is in charge of a Canadian NGO. She was supposed to leave 4 weeks ago, and she's still inside. So you may have seen on the news and social media that people were trying to petition for Americans to get out, for Canadians, and for other workers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so if nobody has one, then I'll go for it. How easy is it for people who are in Gaza to tell their stories?
It is fairly difficult because this is also the first war zone I've seen where an entity has had the power to limit telephone internet access. It's a very strange thing. So when I was inside, most of the day I didn't have connectivity. And this is what we had to do. We had to get the Egyptian SIM card, and we're told it may only work at the Rafah border. Then we get an Israeli eSIM, which will work inside, but it's been limited. Then there's a Palestinian SIM card, 2 types, so we got that. I activated my international Verizon plan, which does cover Palestinian territories, but in the end, most of the time, none of it worked. So how does that impact them to tell their stories? You'll see the influencers like Bisan and before Motaz, they were able, but I'll give you an example. I am working with a doctor that we just hired. He texted me, I think just yesterday, that he had to walk 2 kilometers to get internet access, like data or Wi-Fi, whatever it was. And on top of that, right now in the Middle East, it's very hot. It's hotter than here. It's like dry desert heat. There's rarely clouds and rain. So imagine and on top of that, there's very limited water. So people are going to be dehydrated no matter what, right? So for them to share their stories, they have to really have the desire to move to that place where they get connection. It's also not like the way we have unlimited, 5G, unlimited text. They will have limited minutes, limited SMS, like the regular text message, and not unlimited data. So in order for them to tell their story, they really have to make a huge effort. And it's very hard. Even the way we're working, I might not hear from them for a couple of days. And the first thing that goes through my mind is if they're still alive. It's not if they got internet, it's actually if they're still alive.
You mentioned that it's costing a lot of money to get an egg or any kind of food is costing a lot of money. People are not getting paid for their work, so are they living off their savings? And if so, what's that doing to their mental health?
I really I've seen over the months that they're getting very tired. What I can say, and one reason why I feel like I have to keep working with the Palestinians, is because they will still smile when they see us. They will look very well groomed, even though they're living in tents and don't have as much water to take showers freely. I don't even know how often, but they are still so well put together and still optimistic. They never talk to me about, oh, my life is so terrible. They don't talk about like misery, or they don't talk ill, honestly, about Israel, Hamas, like all the different sides. Like when we're together, we're just connecting, one-on-one. And I'm sorry, what was your main question? I lost the train of my thought.
About how they're paying for things
How they're paid for,
and how,
and the mental health.
it's affecting their mental health.
I think that they are, I hate saying this in some ways, but it is true that they've become very resilient. I don't know how. When I was there, I couldn't sleep a whole lot because there were always drones. And the drones, I'm not talking about like the camera drones. They're like giant, they look like bomber planes, and they're drones that make this like zzz sound, and they drop lower in the middle of the night, which we always talk about in humanitarian aid. It's psychological warfare. Like it's meant to keep everybody up, and it certainly kept us up as aid workers. So mentally, they are not getting sleep, and they're not in a place where they can sleep and get good rest. But somehow, let's say if I went in there and I didn't know any of these things, I didn't even know it was a war zone, I don't think I would know that they were going through this. So I don't think that their mental health is good. I don't think that they are well, but they are able to be resilient and be strong and continue just being good people despite what's going on. Yeah, but I have noticed, especially people I met in March. My first time in Gaza was in March. As I've gotten to, we still talk. Sometimes we try to send each other videos or audio messages, or I'll see their photos on social media. They look more and more tired. Like you can tell they're not sleeping. They're like, it's just been a lot for them. So mental health is a major role in humanitarian aid. Like for example, the children. One of the things that I like to do, not just in Gaza, but in other parts of the world, is have programs with the children to engage them, to laugh with them, to teach them a little bit, just to take their mind off of these things. And we can do that. There's capacity to do that. Even when I couldn't get back in, I'll give you another example of, because part of this is talking about how we can help without being there. We're able to organize little play days for the children. Like we'll have to organize it with the adults, but we can say like, okay, we can try to buy these supplies, we'll buy these toys. If we're able to send something in, then we will do that. But we can organize these little events for the kids. Thank you. Mila.
Hi, Nina. I'd like to take a step back a little bit. You were a full-time nurse in New York City, and you then became a full-time humanitarian aid worker. What was the catalyst for this change? You said that you had, everything you needed in New York, and you sold everything and decided to become a nomad. What was the catalyst? What made you do that?
The catalyst was a depressive episode and also leading to me having suicidal ideations. Now, it sounds very extreme, but I'm able to say this years later. I went through the hospital systems. I was a ER nurse, and then I went into management. Not exactly looking for that, but it just came naturally in my career. So I had good benefits, I had good pay, I had a house, I had a backyard, and I had all these things. But I was very depressed and I couldn't figure it out. Now, during that time, because I started humanitarian aid early on in my career, but first I would go on for like a 2-week trip to Haiti, a 2-week trip to Bangladesh, 1-month deployment to Iraq. And I reached this point in my life where I realized that I think psychologically, I didn't know at the time, but I no longer could find work in the hospital fulfilling because there's so much need in the world outside. People often ask me, why don't you help your people in the US, like the kids or whoever? And I said, come on, there's Medicare, Medicaid, which is like government insurance. There's free library, free education. There's shelters. People might not want the shelter, but it's available. So I think in my heart, I knew that I had to step away from taking care of patients in the hospital. And now I actually took care of a hospital in New York during COVID. So I got to see a very different side to healthcare also. That was interesting to me because I had to manage and, do everything outside of the box. But still, after that is when I realized I became depressed. And now that I've been doing humanitarian aid, and since starting my own NGO and writing a book, I actually haven't had a real salary in over a year. Obviously, I've saved money to be able to do this, and I sold everything, so I probably made a little bit of money there. But I tell people all the time, like, I can't imagine that I don't have a $100,000 salary the way I used to in New York. And I am more happy now, and I feel more fulfilled. And I know that the need is there forever. So now I just try to take care of myself, and I make sure that I can do what I can for whoever really needs the help. And right now, the world is watching. It's definitely in Gaza. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you for sharing. Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Nina. My
Hi.
question is, because you have so many experience with humanitarian aid, and I'm just wondering, in all these conflict places, there's always humanitarian aid for medical, of course. But what about psychological first aid or mental health? Is there any NGO at all doing that? The psychological first aid, not only for the people who are affected, but also for the humanitarian aid workers.
Thank you for that question. And I love that Mila asked that. So Mila is the founder of Safe Space Phuket. And I met her years ago for sessions in her place. And it is a huge topic in the world, but we do a very poor job in general of taking care of ourselves. And NGOs generally do a very poor job of taking care of those who have deployed back and forth. Like, for example, I think the military is also, in the US, is also not so great about taking care of veterans when they return. So I think mental health globally is already seen as like, we'll get to it when we can. And it will always be like rush in with the food and water, rush in with the medical care, but leave the mental health for last. So I've, sadly, in this response, I've watched a lot of my colleagues change over the months. And I mean in a way where like I worry for their own safety and how they're dealing with this, because it's a lot and it's very easy to get caught up in the depressing parts of these experiences. Because I've been in other war zones and I actually suffered from my own mental illness, as I mentioned, I've had a major depressive episode. I've had suicidal ideations. And the book that I wrote and brought today is also about when I had a manic episode. And I had that after Iraq. And I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The story there is after Iraq, I came home to New York City. I was living there then, and I was surrounded by all the healthcare providers, all the psychiatrists, like colleagues who were therapists and things like that. And no one could really help me. I felt like no one could understand what I was going through. Even if I tried to verbalize it, I probably didn't know how to. And I didn't know that I should go to therapy. I didn't know that I should decompress, and that there will be a great contrast between some of the work that I'm seeing and what's back in New York. The best example I can give is when I came back from Iraq after that war, I sat with a bunch of friends. We were having dinner, and our routine was like, you get together once a month, you have dinner, you have dessert. So by the time we got dessert, I remember looking at it and feeling really disgusted and angry. It had nothing to do with what was happening in that, let's say, ecosystem, because that's what I would have done if I didn't go off into a war zone. So my friends didn't know better at the time. Part of what I like to do now is exactly that, bring light to mental health, bring education. I just started my NGO, but every person who works in my NGO, like volunteers or anybody, like that is my main priority, that they are well. It doesn't matter if that there's work to do. There's always going to be work to do. It can be 24/7 if you want it to be, but it's now my personal priority. And I guess I can say I can do that, or I'm more inclined to do that because I went through hospitalizations. I've had to take medications. I've had to learn the hard way how to survive PTSD and all these other issues. We don't do a good enough job, and I'm hoping that I can be a part of the change that starts it.
So how can we help you with your NGO? What can we do?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So I don't want to jump straight away, but okay, funding is an option if you don't want to think about it, right? But the way I tell people is, it doesn't have to be only giving money, because I also know that it's hard to know where your money is going, and it's hard to know who to trust, right? Like most of you are meeting me for the first time. Why would you want to just trust me, right? I understand that. So the way I explain to anyone, it could be someone who's never done this work before, it could be someone who's done it for a long time. It's like, do you want to do advocacy? Do you want to engage children and have fundraising events that the kids can now take part in? And you would be surprised how many little children are looking at these events and saying, those children should get to go to school. Those children in Gaza should get to play the way I do. And I'll give you an example of how I've seen children involved. In New York, there's a high school or middle school in Long Island that they will do this on weekends. They go to the supermarket, they set up something for Ecuador where they're like building houses, the NGO built houses, and then like they advocate for that. So I always think about this, like children have it in them to do this, so adults certainly can. So when I talk to adults, they're like, okay, well, how can I do that? How can I do this? I said, you can start by very simple. Do a crowd fundraiser. We have all the GoFundMe, all of the Facebook, all of the links. Like, we're so connected in the world that we don't have to leave our chair sometimes to make a difference. And this is the truth. Because that's how I started. I started my career raising funds since I was like 24 years old to help me pay for some trips that maybe I couldn't afford before, but the plane ticket might cost a lot. So I would do the fundraiser and do a GoFundMe, right? And then I asked people, if you want to go a step further, let's talk about how I can engage you. The example I can give you is a friend this week. She lives in the UK, and she's originally from Bangladesh. She is a doctor. And she is always telling me, like, okay, I'm watching the news. It's very horrible. She's posting things on her own social media. It's very horrible. And then she's like, I'm very depressed because it's very horrible. And I said, yes, it all is very horrible. But I challenged her and I said, why don't you come and do some work with me? Let's see what your skill set is. You're a doctor, right? So I'm going to hire doctors. Like, maybe we can set up a program where, with the mental health piece, Mila, even us having like WhatsApp messages with the Palestinians inside, it makes a world of difference, because they've said to me, like, oh, we're not alone. Like, it feels like you're with me even though you're not here. And that's huge. That's really huge. So there's many ways to get involved. So like I said, for some people I've met, they're like, okay, no, I just want to donate and that's it. That's fine. Others, they want to learn about what I'm doing in Gaza and how they can get involved. And there's actually a lot of ways that you can. One of the programs that we're setting up now, it's like, we used to call it pen pals. Like, when you would have a buddy from across the world in the US. I don't know what the equivalent of that is in other places. A pen pal or a, I don't know, internet friend, but like structured. So it's like supervised. So one of the volunteers who was in Gaza, she set up this doctor-to-doctor program. It'll be international doctors and other healthcare workers. They will be a pen pal and buddy to a Gazan Palestinian doctor or healthcare worker. And I'm not talking about writing letters and emailing. It's about providing that psychosocial support and chit-chatting. Like, honestly, like, everyone can still be in touch with social media, like Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, even though you might not hear from each other as frequently as, you know, the ones in this room we can. That is one thing that we can do. And that volunteer is taking it further. She's trying to engage people who are willing to give financial support every month, but to pair them up so that's like you see where your money is going. It's not just you hand it over to this NGO and you don't know what happens. You, like, okay, let's say Mila's a doctor. You will pair you up with this doctor inside Palestine. You'll be linked up to communicate, and then you would support that doctor who's not getting paid and who has maybe been relocated 9 times and is living in a tent with 5, 6, 7 family members. And then going further, which I think it may be a little bit harder for this group, is for people who would actually want to go, and there is capacity to bring volunteers in. Obviously, you have to be able to tolerate that environment, but honestly, this year, I've seen a lot of volunteers who never were in a war zone before, who never were on a humanitarian aid mission before. And probably given my experience, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing to introduce people who haven't done it, because at some point, I had to do it for the first time.
I'm going to take another one. So, I mean, it's amazing to hear what you're doing, Nina, and the difference that you're making. I think it would be nice to hear a story maybe about people that you must have so many stories because you've helped so many people, but are there any poignant ones that come to mind about, people that you've supported or helped over all these years?
This is my favorite story, and it happens to be from Gaza, but it's also linked to many of the other environments I've been in. So my NGO and a partner NGO, we arranged a 25,000 liter water truck distribution. And this is a big deal because everybody will run from the camp with their jugs. You'll see the kids running with it. And at first, I asked, what are we getting into? Because this is a huge truck and it will attract a massive crowd. I have to think about our safety too, and I'll never blame anyone in this situation for this, but we also we worry that it'll get out of control. So I was standing around and trying to see how to start this. My colleagues, there's only like 4 of us doing this, and 15 spouts on the truck. So there's no way we were going to manage all the spouts. It's like people were just going to probably start taking from it. And I just walked over like this, like trying to figure out what to do. And then the kids start coming over to me, as they usually do. And they most of them don't speak English yet. And they're like, hi, how are you? Like they might giggle and laugh about silly things. And I said, go get the water. Just go get the water. And then more and more of the kids came over. And then the parents would come over. They'd bring the babies and like say, hi, this is like my baby. And before I knew it, instead of, there were people getting water, but a huge crowd of kids and teenagers were around me. So my colleague was like, okay, walk over there because now we're making 2 crowds. So they started like jumping and chanting and like, we're not even speaking the same language, but they're just like, yeah. They were saying like, Maya, Maya. In Arabic, Maya is water. So they're like, but I was like, okay, but go get the water with your jug. But they were so happy to interact. And I saw it as a chance to also reflect back the joy to them. And it seemed like such a situation that could get out of control at first, or like very sad because we know that no matter what, someone's not going to get water. But it ended up being a really joyous activity because the kids were happy to hang out and to play around. And I think we got most of them to go get the water, but like they kept following me around and like we were blocking the street. Like it was crazy, like to the point where I said like this is about what my work is about, and it's like I feel the most for children, as I think most people do. But to be able to go in there and give them this experience. Like they're more happy and excited, I think, sometimes to see us than the water. I had to tell them, go get the water, They needed it, but they were very, they really need the world to show that we're with them. And when they get to spend the time with us and to get to like be kids for a little bit, to be silly, we laugh and play with them. We'll like tickle them and joke around with them. Like I think that is for me, the most important humanitarian part that I can bring. Thank you. So for today, we set up a booth over here. If you would at all like to donate to what's going on, please stop to see Mila. And also, originally, this wasn't meant to be a book event, but I happened to have a few copies of my book, and we wanted to see if anyone would be interested in doing a raffle for it. I'm not an experienced raffle MC, but yes, okay.
Actually, can you hear me? My name's John, and probably everyone knows this, but we have a theatre here called Junkyard Theatre. And what I'd like to do is we'll donate a night of Junkyard Theatre. So we do a whole event as a donation. And Chantel, I think wherever she went, over there, if she can help market the Junkyard Theatre night for Gaza, the Gaza night, then whatever revenue comes in can go to your cause.
Thank you.
So I think if everyone here signs up, we've already got a number of people. You'll have a lovely night, a normal night, and you're supporting I think a wonderful cause. So yeah.
Thank you so much, John. I mean, I have a very big confession. So I worked for a lot of entities before, right? Hospitals and NGOs. And I am only first getting into like trying to figure out how to donate and, to fundraise and hold up an NGO that I have lots of great ideas for and I'm implementing projects for. So really like, it goes to show that there is a community here. Like Chantal jumped to make this, and John, thank you for that. And like Mila like volunteered to help. Like I do struggle with the fundraising part. And then like now as I'm moving into it, I think I will find my way. But it's just very helpful to have support from people wherever I go. So thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, maybe I should talk about my book if I'm going to raffle it off. Can I take a copy? Thank you. Okay, so let's start here. I was working with the Ukraine war for almost a year, like since the start of it. I think it was 2022. By the end of it, by December or so, I reached a point where I think I was getting a little bit burnt out. And as I mentioned, now I'm at the stage in my life where I don't want to go down that spiral and I want to take care of myself in order to keep taking care of other people. So, of course, I still was working, even though I said I'll take time off. I took 6 months off to write this book. I named it Deeds Not Words, a story about Iraq, love, and mania. And it's a semi-fiction novel about my experience as a humanitarian aid worker in Iraq. And it's not only about that. I also talk about how I returned home and wasn't feeling right, didn't know what to do, how I was hospitalized, how I suffer from PTSD and a number of other issues. But because of that, because of the fact that I wrote it, like even if I didn't share it with anyone at all, there was a therapeutic factor in writing down my experiences and just putting it down. It took years to actually be able to do this because when I first got back from Iraq in 2017, there were some passages where I couldn't even write it out. Like a scene in particular, there was a lady, her legs were amputated. I'm minding the children. The legs were amputated. And like the image was just stuck in my head, but like that's part of healing and caring for mental health, like finding your outlets. So therapy, writing, for me, it ended up being writing. Oh, hi, Kai. It ended up being writing, and I ended up self-publishing this. I put it out, and I happen to have a copy, and Mila has some that I left from her last time. So they're available. We can raffle one, and then the others, if somebody wants to purchase it, you can do that. So like I said, I'm not a professional raffler, but if anybody wants to start... Hi! Oh. Chantal will start. Oh, okay. Use this one? No, I don't want to use your copy. Okay, it will be this copy, and I'll sign it. Okay. So we'll take it for 1,000 baht. 1,000 baht. Do we have anything above that? Oh, 1,500 is there.
We have 1,500.
baht. Thank you. 1,500 baht. Woo, 2,000 baht
at the back.
We have a competition. 2,500 baht. Thank you. Do we have anyone who can beat 2,500 baht?
Come on, guys. Dig deep. You'll be reading all night. I've read the reviews. Every single review on Amazon has been 5 stars for this book. Okay, so it's a good read. Anybody else? We got 3 here.
3,000 baht. Thank you very much. 3,000 baht. Anybody else for 3,000 baht?
Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will come sign it later. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I'll come around and I'll talk to you individually. I think that might be nice to answer more questions. But also, if there are questions as a group, I'm happy to answer anything.
I'll give it straight to.
Okay, then that's all I have. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Oh, yeah, is there a question? Yes.
Where can we find you if we want to follow what you're up to?
Oh, good question. I didn't make a business card yet, but there are cards that I made for my book, and my Instagram is there. I put a lot of my content, or I don't want to call it content actually, a lot of my photos and videos from my journey in Gaza and life on Instagram. And then at the table, I'll have my website opened up. My NGO is called Help Me Live USA. And we have a page there, which I put under the Instagram one. So I can pass out the business cards. And, oh, Chantal's already doing it. Thank you. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook. As many of you found me on Facebook. Well, I found you, and then we found each other on Facebook. I do have TikTok. I have an email. I'm happy to connect on WhatsApp also, like all of the above. And the Candy there, hi Candy, she started a Facebook group called Thailand for Palestine, Phuket for Palestine. And the reason, so I only met Candy a few days ago also. We happened to have a mutual contact and friend in Cairo. She was in Cairo, and there's a lovely lady there named Steph who made her own NGO that services Palestinians. And in short, we want to make a group that is at least on a social media platform, because I know it's hard to meet up all the time and to have events, but we can continue conversations there. And I've also met a lot of people from Phuket who said they wanted to hear more about Gaza or learn about what they can do, how they can support, and also get news from people who've been there. And they just didn't know the forum to do it. Someone told me that her name's Courtney. She said that this was the first event that is for Palestine, and she mentioned she's been looking for months. She lives here most of the year, and she didn't find any. So we'll find a way to get you the information. If we connect on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever, you'll find me there. Thank you. Thank you.